Hello, everyone. My name is Edward Ramirez from St. Philip's College, Diesel Technology, and we're going to be talking today about this brake board, specifically this air brakes. So I want to talk about these major components of the air brakes. So one of the first major components of the air brakes is a air compressor. Now this air compressor here is a two-cylinder air compressor. It has a governor, okay, that is adjustable here on the top to increase the cutout or decrease the cutout, and also the cut in. Now the cut in pressure is at about 100 psi. So you notice that you have this brass line coming off of this compressor. Now this compressor is air cooled. It's also oil cooled, and you have to drain the moisture from that compressor. So you have this air dryer. This air dryer takes care of removing the moisture from the compressor. Now, there's a lot of peculiarities with this compressor, and they have different models for different types of diesel engines or even gasoline engines. But this compressor will build up the pressure on this supply tank right here. It's called the wet tank. It's also called supply. So it could be called supply, it could be called wet. But this is where a lot of the moisture will accumulate. And so this has a spitter valve that every so often it'll just psh. Sometimes you can just be sitting at a stop sign with the heavy duty truck sitting next to you, and that spitter valve will shoot out a bit of moisture. It's removing the moisture, and that's normal. Now every reservoir has to have a petcock, and on that petcock it's used to release the pressure in the tank. Okay, this one has a release valve. If it ever gets over a certain pressure, it's going to release the air pressure in the release valve. Okay, so I'm moving over to from the wet tank or the supply tank, moving over to the primary tank. Now the primary tank generally feeds the front axle, and then you also have a secondary tank. And this feeds the rear axle, say like on a tractor or a dual tandem vehicle. So this secondary tank for the rear axles, the primary tank generally for the front axle. When you step on the throttle valve, that's this component right here. You step on the brakes. It feeds air pressure to the front axle. Now when it's doing that, you have these quick release valves. You have them here, and you have them here. And what it does, it just slows down the air pressure because your throttle valve is so close to the front axle, so you'll get a balanced brake. It'll stop your front wheels, and it'll also stop your rear wheels. You also have quick release valves in the back. You have double check valves, and this vehicle, because it has ABS system, this ABS system, you can see the yellow light comes on for ABS. It's also got ATC, and I'll get into that in just a bit. So then, if we're still looking at the front of the vehicle, this front of the vehicle has brake chambers. You've got a brake chamber here for the front axle, left axle. You've got a brake chamber for the right front, left front, right front brake chambers. Now these are self-adjusting slack adjusters. They call them ASAs, automatic self-adjusting slack adjusters. And right here, you can put like it's a 9/16 wrench, maybe 14 millimeter wrench, and you depress the spring lock on there, and you can lock up the wheel if the slack adjuster ever needs adjusting. It's automatic, so it should be self-adjusting. If you have to go in there and say every preventive maintenance inspection that you're doing on the vehicle, you find that you have to adjust the slack adjuster, well then you know that there's a problem in the mechanism for the slack adjuster, and it should be replaced. Same thing here, automatic slack adjuster. Now what you're looking for in the brake balance is when you're stepping on the brake, operator gets in the cargo cab, steps on the brake, and someone's underneath the vehicle, and they're looking at the clevis rods, looking at the linkage, what you're trying to achieve is a 90-degree angle on these automatic slack adjusters or any type of slack adjuster. You can see these are just above 90. The bottom one's at 90. The top one's at just a little over 90. The ones in the back, because I have the brake set, the parking brake set. All right, now I had mentioned about the spitter valve. I also mentioned about the high pressure relief valve on the tanks, and every tank should have a drain valve. I can't find the drain valve on this tank, but every heavy duty truck has a drain valve. Supply or the wet tank, primary tank for the front axle, secondary tank for the rear axles on the tractor. Or if it's a dump bed or a straight truck, for the rear axles. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the this here, we call this a trolley valve. Like if you have a combination vehicle, lots of times the truck drivers will use the trolley valve to slow down the trailer, and they're going to save the brakes on the tractor. So what happens is they probably own the tractor, and they don't want to have to pay for maintenance on the tractor. So they'll use the trolley valve for the brakes on the rear of the vehicle, the trailer, to slow it down, and then release it. So that works. Going over to the ABS, we've got the ABS, and if you can see, I'm going to press the button, you can see that the wheels are spinning. So as the wheels are spinning, on that wheel, it's the reluctor wheel, and that reluctor wheel has 100 teeth, and it's got a brake sensor, ABS brake sensor, and on that brake sensor, you have to have a certain amount of clearance. It could be 5 to 8 thousandths, whatever the specifications call for. But just remember that if you don't have that clearance on that ABS sensor, it's probably going to set a code. Okay, so now I'm moving to the back of the vehicle. Okay, so those were the front axle over there. This is the rear axle of the vehicle. It's a single axle in this illustration here, what the brake board is. You have a spring control brake valve. You have a double check valve. You have your modulators. You have the ABS modulator. You have 2 of them, one for each wheel. You have a relay valve also. Remember I told you in combination, you have the relay valve for the front of the vehicle. You have a relay valve for the back of the vehicle. And it helps to balance the brake pressure. So the pressure will go to the front and to the rear of the vehicle at the same time. There's certain PSIs that these relay valves are set for. They're usually like 2 to 4 PSI. Once the pressure gets there, it allows the pressure to reach the axle. Okay? So I want you to watch these automatic slack adjusters, and you can see it right here for the adjustment. You can see this one needs to be adjusted. Probably this one needs to be adjusted. Put that 9/16 wrench on there and tighten it up. As I hit the brake pedal, notice that those, when I saw them, they weren't at 90 degrees. So let's see what they are at now. So I would say that they're greater than 90 degrees. If they were 90 degrees, it would be straight up and down. And they're not. It's greater than 90 degrees. So you're not going to have a complete brake balance. You need to adjust those slack adjusters. Okay? That's very important, so you'll have that brake balance. Now, on this brake chamber, so let's move this just a tad here. So you can see maybe a little bit better on this brake chamber. Right here you have this little plug. Right inside this plug, you put your tool to adjust the brake chamber. Okay? Now notice this clamp right here for this brake chamber. I guess it could be called like a tamper resistant. You cannot take this apart. In order to, if you have a seal leak, a diaphragm leak on this chamber, you have to replace it. Back in the day, you would replace the chamber, but anymore you replace the whole component, the whole piggy bank. That's what they want you to do. And if you can see right here, here's where the tool belongs. You stick the tool in there, put like a 19 millimeter, 3/4 inch wrench, and you collapse that brake spring to release the parking brakes manually, to release the parking brake manually. Okay, so this is tamper resistant. Say you're going to replace this component, it's okay. Just drain the air pressure, take it apart, take the mounting bolts off, take the whole assembly off, and when you're ready to discard this, you're going to cut a hole in this spring brake chamber here and cut the rungs on that spring. That way it releases the pressure. Further on down the line, the junkyard, wherever, scrapyard, nobody's going to get hurt. So this is where, if you had a situation where a truck's broken down on the road, the brakes are locked up, you need to move the truck, maybe you want to release the spring brakes, maybe you can't build up pressure, whatever, you put your adjusting tool in there, tighten up that nut, and cage that spring, and you'll be able to rotate those wheels, and you can move the vehicle safely, maybe to the garage, to the side of the road, up on a wrecker, whatever it may need. Okay? Now, the front part of this brake chamber, right here, we already determined that they needed adjustment. Okay? You can pull the brake chamber off, and it's got a clamp right here. Maybe you can see it if I move it a little bit better. This clamp is the only one that's serviceable here. Generally, you're replacing the whole piggyback assembly. Okay? But you can just replace the diaphragm. Now you can find those diaphragms on Amazon. They're about $20, and it would save a lot of money if you want to do it that way. But you can replace the whole assembly. You can go through Meritor. You can go through Bendix, any of those brake manufacturers to get the component. You have to match the numbers. They come in different sizes, 24 inch, 34, 30. They come in different chamber sizes. So you have to get the information for the part number on the brake chamber. Now notice, once again, I'm going to step on the brake. You're going to watch that. Notice that they're greater than 90 degrees. They need to be adjusted. Okay? They need to be adjusted. The linkages need to be adjusted on the automatic slack adjusters. Very important. Once again, spring brake control valve. Say, for example, if you have a leak, an air leak, coming out of this spring brake control valve, it could be feeding back from the diaphragm. You don't know that until you do some troubleshooting. You could get the feedback from that diaphragm all the way back up to the treadle valve, up under here. You could have a leak up under here. You could hear it. A lot of technicians will go in there real quick and they replace that treadle valve, and they still have a leak. Why? Because they have a leak on the diaphragm, and it's just going to feed back. So you have to do your troubleshooting to verify when you have a leak. How do you find these leaks? Well, a little soap and water, a little spray bottle with some soap and water, and you're checking for air leaks. You have specifications for a tractor, how many PSI the tractor can bleed down in 2 minutes. Maybe it's 4 PSI. If it's a combination vehicle, it'd be like 6 PSI. Okay? So, recapping, wet tank, okay, supply tank, primary tank for the front axle, secondary tank for the rear axle, relay valve, slows down the brake balance. You've got a relay valve for the rear axle as well, okay, and that's right here. You have a double check valve, you have a spring brake control valve, and then you have your ABS modulators. Very important. So now we're back at the trailer. We're back here at the trailer. The trailer has its own reservoir as well. See, it's got the gauge. We're looking at 130 PSI. So here on the trailer, your petcock should be here. Well, they have a plug here for this trailer board, but you're going to have a petcock. You're going to have the trailer ECU. This one is a WAPCO trailer electronic control unit for the ABS. So this trailer has ABS. Remember I told you that reluctor wheel has 100 teeth. You've got the sensors, and these sensors feed back into the module, the ECU, and they feed it data. and how fast the wheel is spinning. Say if one side of the tractor, the wheel's slower than the other, it's going to feed that information back to the ECU unit. Okay? Now, let's watch these rear brake chambers, automatic slack adjusters, as I apply the brake. Let's look at that and you tell me if they're greater than 90 degrees. Brake on. The top one is a little greater, and the bottom one's almost there, from what I can tell from here. Actually, I didn't see that bottom one move. For whatever reason, that bottom was not getting any air pressure. So there's a problem here with the air supply. With this brake chamber is not moving, I'm going to have to troubleshoot that. Anymore, this one was functioning. You saw the reluctor wheel with the brake sensors. Let's see if we can get that to come on. Now we got it to move there. You see that? Oh, you know what? I think I have. No? No, they're both off. So that reluctor, the 100 can set a code. Right here. Only showing one, but you're supposed to have two, one for each side. This brake board is only showing us one. You have the spring brake control valve, the trailer ECU, we talked about that a little bit, slack adjuster, spring brake right here, reluctor, ABS, and then you have these glad hands. You have these glad hands. Let's see. That's got air pressure applied to it. That's got air pressure applied to it. So you want to inspect the inside of those glad hands. They have a seal. And with the seal inside those glad hands, if you're towing a trailer, if that seal is bad, from time to time they do wear, because it's just a rubber component. Let me see. Recap. Double check valve here for the stoplight switch. Look at that. Got an electrical connector for the stoplight switch. Got a double check valve. You have a tractor protection valve. Okay, protects the tractor in the event that there's a breakaway. It's going to protect the tractor brakes, and you won't have a massive loss of air pressure with the tractor protection valve. And there's a test that we'll be doing, a lab sheet that we'll be completing, where you'll be doing a leak test, build-up test, tractor protection valve test, and so forth. Say this Canon plug here, if this is a 7-pin Canon plug, to put your ABS diagnostic test equipment. You put your tester in there and you run it up. I understand you guys are using the Oasis system, the Ford, but you run it up and you troubleshoot your diagnostics, see if you got any hard fault codes, any intermittent codes, and you can even read the parameters, and you can also work your ABS. Make it come on, make it come off. So this would be your plug, just like you'd find under the dash. You also, on the trailer portion, you have a light that comes off and on the trailer. I think they started putting those on about 2017. Don't forget you got the spitter valve, the trolley valve. You've got here the parking brake. It sets the parking brake. The trailer. This valve here has a leak, so you have to troubleshoot that. You know the leak is right here. You think, oh, that valve is bad. Maybe one of the diaphragms is leaking, and it's feeding back into this valve. You have to check that. So the way you would do that is you disassemble the line, and you're just feeding back, maybe to the chambers, see where it's feeding. You're going to have to find that out. ATC, You can turn the ATC on. Let's see what that does for us. It's not working for us. Automatic traction control. You can see back in the back, it's causing the reluctor wheel to spin. Those sensors, you've got an air gap on those sensors. You have to make sure this is for the left wheel, this is for the right wheel. They just have it assembled there on the individual unit. For the automatic traction control, ATC, same thing here for the tractor. It controls the traction. That way, it's telling the computer whether one wheel is spinning faster than the other. It knows it may have a problem. There's a lot of information on this brake board. I wish I could have all of them here so you could actually get your hands on it. You could talk about the tractor protection valve, the modulators, the relay valves. You know, you have one for the front, you have one for the rear. The 3 tanks, the wet tank, supply tank, primary tank for the front axle, secondary tank for the rear axle, and then the tank for the trailer, if you're towing a trailer. And that's just a real quick rundown on the brake board that we have here at the St. Philip's College. And if any of you are ever in the neighborhood, feel free to come by, and I'll be glad to give you a demo. And that's it. Thank you.